Hey guys, welcome to today's session on data analytics using Excel. Now, data is everywhere, right from texting someone to buying something online or even posting something on social media. Every single thing involves creation of massive amounts of data every minute. Every industry, be it healthcare, e-commerce, technology, or finance, has data at its center of operations. So now it becomes increasingly important to analyze this data so that we can find some meaningful trends and opportunities for the future. Data analytics in the recent times has been the most sought after domain. To make sure you are ahead of this competition, we here at Great Learning have brought this wonderful course so that you can begin your data analytics journey and land your dream job. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, we request you to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. This is done to make sure you don't miss out on any of the new updates or video releases of Great Learning. And of course, if you enjoy this video, show us some love. Do like the video. Knowledge increases by sharing. So make sure you share this video to your friends, family, and whoever can make use of it. And at the end of it, make sure to comment on this video if you have any queries and suggestions, and I would be more than happy to respond to all of your comments. Before moving on, let's talk about our learning objectives. So we'll start by discussing three different phases of a data analytics project and have a bird's eye view on each one of them. Then we'll discuss about the importance of data cleaning and the different ways in which we can clean data. Next, we'll talk about the basic functions and formulas that are a must to know when it comes to data analysis. Furthermore, we'll be talking about different ways in which we can sort and filter data in Excel. Next, we learn about two different types of lookup functions, vertical lookup and horizontal lookup functions. Then we'll know what is conditional formatting and also how can we make color scales, data bars, and also highlight cells. Then we'll know about data validation, how to create drop-down list and fix length in a cell. Then we'll know about what are pivot tables, what is the importance of pivot tables, and how can we use them to analyze data. In the end, we'll talk about data visualization using Excel. We'll learn how to make different types of charts like tree charts, scatter maps, map charts, etc. Phases of a data analytics project. Now the journey of raw data from to meaningful data can be categorized into three phases. The first, data cleaning, second is data analysis, and the third is data visualization. Now for data cleaning, our first step would be to set up a problem statement that would be aimed in solving a specific business problem of your client. Now, what is this problem statement? For example, a phone manufacturer would like to know how many customers actually bought their product while seeing an ad on YouTube. Now, this would involve data. The second step would be to perform an initial analysis on data. So we need to check whether the data is complete, consistent, and accurate. Next, we'll check for any misspellings and typos. So the raw data can consist a lot of errors and mistakes that need to be removed as soon as possible. So we would remove any misspellings, typos, or even duplicates. Row can be duplicated, columns can get duplicated. So we need to remove that as well. Last is checking for bias. Now, what is a bias? For example, let's assume that your data set is derived from a survey conducted by a food company to know how good is their food. So one of the questions in that column was how good was the food? So this statement is inaccurate because it contains the word good. Now, which is biased towards the positive side of the company and would not give them a clear picture of how their product is. Which is why it becomes essentially important to remove these kinds of bias as soon as we get the data. Next phase is data analysis. So this is the core of your operations. Since your data is already cleaned and organized, in this phase, you will be playing around with data to find some meaningful insights. So you'll start by deeply understanding the problem statement, finding appropriate relationships between data sets, and also adjusting and formatting data by using certain methods and techniques like lookup functions, conditional formatting, data validations, and using pivot tables. Going forward, we'll look each one of them in depth. Next phase is data visualization. Now, studies have shown that human beings are more adaptive in understanding via visual representation. Now, data visualization provides your analysis to be delivered to your clients and stakeholders in the most efficient manner so that they can make well informed and thoughtful decisions and also find some greater underlying trends and opportunities for the future. So in this phase, we'll be learning about different types of charts like scatter plots, tree charts, map charts, bar charts, and many more. Next up is data cleaning. Let's assume that you are given a data analytics project. Now, as a data analyst, your first objective is to make sure your data set is out of any irregularities, misspellings, or typos. Consider it like a bowl of salad that you are preparing. The ingredients would be salt, pepper, fresh vegetables, and some sauces. But now, if the vegetables are not fresh, your final product would be dull and unappetizing, which you won't even eat. Which is why it becomes essentially important that your effort does not go in vain. Same is the case with the data analytics journey. If you do not incorporate data cleaning process, then your final result would be hampered and even consisting of a lot of irregularities that your stakeholders won't even like. Which is why data cleaning plays a essential role to make sure your end results would be in line and uniform with the stakeholders' expectations. Moving on, we look at some of the ways in which we can clean data. Now, Microsoft Excel has been the most dominant platform available in market for decades now and it still stands at number one. So we'll do all our analysis henceforth in Excel. So giving you a basic tour. So this space is called a spreadsheet space. Then we have different tabs on the top, right? So these are known as ribbons. So you can perform various activities choosing these. So this is a data set. Verticals are called as columns. Horizontals are called as rows. The first row is called a header or a column heading. So this is the heading of different columns that we have here. So now we have this raw data with us and we need to clean it. So in order to do that, we'll perform certain tasks. So the first one being we need to check if there are any duplicates present. So I'll look around it, but I don't think so. I see any. But since it's very confusing this way, we'll Excel already has one function called removing duplicates. So we'll click on data here and then we'll click on remove duplicates. So it will automatically select the entire data set and you can also check which all columns do you want. In our case, we'll click on each one of them so that entire data set is selected. Then we'll click on OK. So our naked eye could not see that there were duplicates, but there were. So there were two duplicates that got removed and there are 23 unique values left. So we'll click on OK. So the duplicates have already removed. Now, this is a very small data set for understanding purposes, but while you will analysis data, you would not get this small data set ever. So then certain things like remove duplicates becomes really important to know. Next up, we'll just glance through it and we'll see if there are any irregularities present. So I don't see any, but here we go. So in this 14th tab, we see years of experience as 90. So now let's just think. So 90 is not feasible value as year of experience. So it would be a mistake on the client's part or from where you receive the data set. So you need to cross examine it. So whether it is 9 or 19 or something like that. So you need to check with, you should not make any changes to it. You should ask your client first that what is the correct value and then make changes. And also, while you're doing these changes, you should also maintain a logbook or you should just create a duplicate of the raw data just in case if your data cleaning you miss certain values so that you can recover it later. Okay. So another thing is I would arrange my salary employee column from let's say lowest to highest. So this is from lowest to highest. This is sort function. So lowest to highest, I see that 1,01,702 here, employee of the salary, 99,000 is below it. So I don't think so that this was correct. So there is a gap in between. So considering all other salaries, they are in 5 digits. One is in 6 digits. So it can be a possibility that this empty space is by mistake. We'll remove that empty space and click OK. Right? Then we'll again click on this and do sort. So this gets sorted, but again you need to check with your client that the removed space was correct or not. So these are certain things that can be an issue when you analyze it in a later stage. So it becomes essentially important to correct everything in advance at the first phase itself. So next we move on to functions. What are functions? Functions are predefined instructions or formulas that perform a specific calculation in a particular order in a spreadsheet. So now what is this instruction or formula that we are talking about? So it is basically in mathematical terms a calculation that is performed for a specific purpose, and that can be anything. For example, it can be addition, subtraction, multiplication, or even finding an average. In order to perform these, if you do it manually, it would take a lot of time and effort. You physically have to put the plus operator between every single digit to perform a sum. So in that case, Microsoft Excel already has some predefined formulas so that you can save your time and effort. Now let's talk about how do we write functions. So basic syntax of function would comprise of three major components. The first is start of a function. So in order for Excel to know that you are inputting a function, it needs to start with an equality operator. Then we need to define what kind of calculation we need to perform. So it can be some maximum, minimum, average, or anything that we want. We need to input that after equality. Then comes the range of cells. So after the parenthesis, we would input the range of cells. So range, what it is, let's look at this example in which it's written E15 and E20. Now E15 would be the first cell and E20 would be the last cell. For the dataset, we want to do that specific calculation. So in this case, 50,220 would be E15, 56,445 would be E20. Now, by clicking on the first cell and dragging it towards the last cell will give me the range of the cell. Then we close the parenthesis and then press enter. So it would give us the average of this dataset. Now coming to what are the major types of functions that are required in data analytics process. So that would be 5 different types. First one being countf, length, left, right, concatenate, and trim. So these 5 operators are mostly used to analyze large chunks of data. Moving on, we'll look at each one of them in depth. So the first one is countf. So countf is a function that counts the number of cells that matches a specific condition. So its syntax would be equals to the start of the function, then countf, then the range in which we want countf to operate, and the condition. So what is the value that we are searching for? For example, in a class of around 20 students, let's say we have 3 students whose name is Abhishek. So, and we need to find how many times the word Abhishek has repeated. So we'll use countf function for that. We'll start off with equality operator, then we'll write countf, open parenthesis and the range of the function. So in our case, the range would be the total number of students, comma, the condition. So condition is Abhishek, close parenthesis. Now the output would be the total number of times Abhishek has been repeated in the entire data set. This saves us a lot of time and effort. Now let's move on to Excel platform and explore CountF little more. So this is a spreadsheet which contains a data set on movie titles and the language in which they are made. So our objective is to find the total number of movies in English, French and Italian. So for that we'll use CountIf function. So we'll write equals to CountIf, open parenthesis, our range. So our range is a language column. So from Germany, we'll drag all the way through Italian, comma, inverted commas, criteria. So we need to find how many movies are made in English. So we'll write English, English, close inverted commas, close parenthesis, and press enter. So now we got total movies that are made in English are 5. Similarly, for French, we'll do count if equals to count if, open parenthesis, the range of the function. So the range would again be the same from German to Italian, comma, criteria, French, F-R-E-C-H. Close inverted commas, close parenthesis, press enter. So French movies are also 5 and we can count that as well. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Yes, it's correct. Similarly for Italian, count if, open parenthesis, the range, Germany to Italian, Germany to Italian, comma, open inverted commas, Italian, and press enter. So total movies made in Italian is 6. So this is how COUNTIF reduces our time and effort for long data sets. This is comparatively very short data set, but in cases of long data set, it saves us a lot of time and effort. Next is length function. So length is a function that returns the length of a text string. Now let's assume that a cell contains a word India. Now India has total number of 5 characters, INDIA. So now this functions would return be the total number of characters in that particular cell. So in this case it is 5. So the syntax is equality len in parenthesis the cell in which we want the function to act. Next, we'll look at another function called left and right function. So similar to length function, left and right function return specific number of characters, but from left and right side in a cell. So it will tell the total number of characters from the left or the right side. So its syntax is equality left or right in parenthesis the cell in which we want the function to act, comma, number of characters from each side. Now let's look at these two examples in Excel. So here we have the same spreadsheet of movie title and language. Now we'll know how do we use it. So we'll put equality sign and we'll write len, open parenthesis. We'll select the language cell, German, and then we'll close the parenthesis and press enter. So now German has total 6 characters, GERMAN. So it will give me exactly the total number of characters in a particular cell. We'll try one more example. Let's say we go for this. So we'll type here equality, len, open parenthesis. We'll click on cell A12 and close parenthesis, enter. So total number of characters in Atlantis is 8. So we got the number 8. Let's just say one more example. So I want Miss Jerry. Total number of characters in Miss Jerry. So if we count manually, it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 characters. Let's see what this gives. I'll type equality, len, open parenthesis, click on cell A2, close parenthesis, press enter. Now, here seems to be an error that it gives 10 characters. Now we need to know that length function also counts the space in between. So this is a point to be noted. Next, we'll look at left and right function. So now this is a spreadsheet in which we have the name of states and the counties with their pin codes. Now let's just say I want to extract the pin codes from this. So I'll first type pin code that I need to extract. Now I can see that pin codes are of only 6 digits. So I can use left function to extract this. So I'll write equals to left, open parenthesis, the cell B2, comma, since pin code is of 6 digits, so I'll write 6 and close parenthesis, press enter. Therefore, I get the pin code of each county. So if I click on this plus sign over the right bottom corner and drag all the way through the spreadsheet, I'll get the pin codes of all the counties present. So now I don't have to manually write everything if I need the pin codes of these. So this makes our work easier. Next, we look into concatenate function. So this function combines multiple text cells into a single cell. So for example, you have your first name and last name. Now you want a cell in which it should be full name. So this concatenate function helps join two different cells into a single cell. So its syntax is equality, concatenate, open parenthesis, cell 1, comma, cell 2, close parenthesis. Next is trim function. So trim function helps remove extra unwanted space from the cell. So a lot of times in raw data, there's a lot of unwanted space within the cell, which is why it could hinder your data analysis going forward. So trim function syntax is equality trim, open parenthesis, cell 1, close parenthesis. Now we'll see these two functions on Excel. So as we can see, this spreadsheet has first name and last name written and we want full name. So in order to use concatenate function, we'll use equality. We'll type in concatenate, open parenthesis, first cell, comma, second cell, close parenthesis, and enter. So now it gives me a full name. But as we can see, there is no gap in between. There's no space in between. But what if we want space? So for that, we'll use equality, concatenate, open parenthesis, cell 1, comma. Now in inverted commas, we'll put a space, which will tell Excel that yes, you want a space in between, comma, last name, close parenthesis and enter. So now it gives you space in between your full name. Now if I hover my cursor towards the right bottom and drag all the way through, so it will give me the same operation in the entire sheet. So this is about concatenate. Next we move on to trim. So this is the same movie title spreadsheet. Now we can see there's a lot of unwanted space here, 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 and here. So in order to remove that, I'll use a trim function. So I'll create an extra column. Now here I'll write equality trim, open this cell, close, enter. Now I'll hover over the right bottom and drag all the way through. So now we can see all the errors here, 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 all these cells that had empty spaces at the start are removed. Next is sort and filter functions. So what is sorting and filtering? Sorting is basically rearranging your data in your spreadsheet in the way you want. So it can be ascending or descending. You can also define your own set of rules by using custom sort option. Now let's look at these examples in Microsoft Excel. So here we have a spreadsheet of employee ID, birth date, age, city name, department, job title, and gender. So now we need to sort this data according to whatever we prefer. So let's say I want the city name to be in ascending order. So I'll click on any of the cells in this column and go to the data ribbon and click on lowest to highest. So it will give me the names in ascending order alphabetically. Now if I want it to be in the reverse order, reverse alphabetical order, so I'll get that as well. Now if I want my city name to start from descending order from reverse alphabetically, and also I want my birth date to start from the oldest to the newest. Now how would we do that? So we'll go to sort option here. So it will open a tab. So as we can see, it automatically selects the entire spreadsheet. Now in this, we can put a preference in the way we want. So our first preference is to make sure the city name is in reverse alphabetical order. So I'll put in sort by city name. We can choose any other, but we want city name. Sort on. Now you can choose a cell color, font color, cell values, etc. But here I want cell values, so I'll click on here. Next, I want what type of order I want. So in this case, I want reverse alphabetical. So I'll go from Z to A, right? Next, I also want that my birth date should start from the oldest to the newest. Now I'll add a level, and then my second preference would be birth date. Again, we need to do it by cell values because I haven't created any other cell color or font color. So I'll go with cell values. Next, I'll do it newest to oldest or oldest to newest. I want oldest to newest. So I click on that and I'll press OK. So now the city name are in reverse alphabetical order, as we can see, and the birth date are from the oldest to the newest. So we can see that here as well, from starting from 1942 going ahead till the last section of 1994. So here, this is the use of sort function. Now, if I need to sort by different color sets, so let's take an example of that as well. So let's say I want my department to be color coded. So I'll put produce as, let's say, which color. Click on home ribbon. I'll choose yellow. Then I want the meats tab to be green. Next, I'll use the bakery as red. Now I'll go again. I'll click here. Now I'll go again to data and sort. Now I'll clear all of these. Now I'll add a level. My first preference here would be to code it by department name. Next, I have color coded it. So I'll click on cell color. Okay. Now Excel automatically detects what all color I have chosen. So I have created three colors, red, green, and yellow. So it shows all three of them here. Now I can click on any one of them that I want to be at the top. So I click on red on top, on bottom. I'll to choose on top, then click OK. So the red color coded scheme gets on the top of my column. Next, if I want to create, I want green to come up next. So what will I do? I'll go to the sort tab. Now I'll create my second preference. Then by again department name, cell color. This time I'll choose green on top. Okay. So after red, my second preference is green. So on and so forth. I can do multiple color sets and sort accordingly. Next, we'll know about filter functions. So filter functions basically narrows down the way you want your specific data to be viewed. So let's say in this example, this is a movie set in which we have the title, year, genre, language, director, and average ratings if it has got. Now I only want to see, let's say, English movies, what all movies are in English. So now sorting it out by English would be one option, but to make it more easier, I'll click on this filter tab. So it will automatically create a drop down list in which we'll have different types of values that are stored in that particular column. Since we need only English, we'll unselect everything else and click on English and hit OK. Now we'll only get the movies that are in English language and nothing else. Similarly, if we want any other language, let's say French. So we'll unclick English, click on French and press OK. Now we'll only get French movies. So this makes our job little bit easier on what we want to do with this data. Next, we look into lookup functions. The first one is VLOOKUP or vertical lookup. So the function that searches for a certain value in a column to return a corresponding piece of information of another column in the same data set. So I'll explain this with an example. Let's say that you are working in a firm that is currently restructuring and you are assigned with this task to arrange the different salaries of employees according to their departments. Now the data set that you are given already only has employee IDs and the corresponding salaries. Now your task would be number one to find who all employees work in what all departments, and number two extracting those salaries from that employee IDs. So in order to extract that from the employee ID, if you go one by one manually, it would take you a lot of time. but this can be cut short through lookup functions. So let's see how that works. First, we look at the syntax of this. So the syntax would be equality, VLOOKUP, open parenthesis. Now VLOOKUP functions have four different parameters. The first one is lookup value, second is table array, third is column index number, and the fourth is true and false. We'll know what that is one by one. So the first one is a lookup value. So lookup value would be the thing that we already know. So in our case, it would be employee ID. Second is table array. So this would be selection of entire data set. Third would be column index number. Now what it is, let's see. So let's say that in the data set, you have two columns. Number one is your employee ID and number two is the salary. Okay, so in order to extract the salary, that would be in column 2. So you would put the column index number as 2 and true and false. So true is if you want a approximate match and false is if you want an exact match of it. So now let's look at VLOOKUP functions in Microsoft Excel. Now we have a spreadsheet which contains employee IDs, years of experience, and salary of the employee. Now we need to find the salary of employee, and we know what all employee ID is there. So employee ID would be the thing that we already know, and to find is salary employee. Now let's say that I want to find a salary of this cell 2161. So I'll type here 2161 and I want to know the corresponding piece of salary. So that corresponding piece of salary is 90140. 90140. So now with lookup functions, we want if we just put the employee ID, the corresponding piece of salary should automatically come, right? So we'll use VLOOKUP in that case. So in the salary column, I'll use the syntax equality VLOOKUP open parenthesis. Now the first is the lookup value. So our lookup value would be employee ID. So I will type employee ID here. So I'll click on this cell, comma. Second is a table array. So our table array is the entire data set. So I'll select the entire data set. Next is I'll use the column index number. So since the salary employee is in column number 3, so I'll put as 3. Comma, now it says that you want an approximate match or an exact match. So I would go with an exact match. So I'll write false, false, close parenthesis and enter. So it says NA since I have not input any employee ID. So let's cross check it. So let's say 212126, right? So I'll type here 2126 and press enter. So now it gives me 49,942. Let's cross check. So the employee ID 2126 has a salary of 49,942. Absolutely correct. So this is the way in which we use lookup functions, and we can type any other thing. Let's check of let's say 3773 and press enter. 99,029. Let's see 73773 99,029. It's absolutely correct. So in this way we can use it. We can use it for years of experience as well. So let's say I want to type experience, exp exp. So I can use the same function. We look up open parenthesis. Lookup value is again I'll put the employee ID to find the years of experience, comma. We'll select the entire data set as a table array, comma. So years of experience is in column number 2. So I'll put 2, comma. I want an exact match. So I'll write false. Or instead of false, I can also put 0. That is also exact match. So I'll put 0 and close parenthesis and press enter. So now it says that 3773 with a salary of 99,029 has an experience of 5.4. Let's cross check it. 3773 99,029 has the experience of 5.4 years. So this way we can use lookup functions, and it is very efficient to use in longer data sets as well. Next, we'll talk about HLOOKUP. So similar to VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP is the same, except instead of column, it searches row here. So rest remains the same. The certain value in a row would return a corresponding piece of information, and the syntax of it also remains the same, but instead of v we have h over here. And also the column we used to search in VLOOKUP, here in this case in HLOOKUP we look at horizontal rows, so the column would be replaced by row. So let's look at the example in Microsoft Excel and know more about it. So this is a spreadsheet. Here we have a table, but now instead of columns, we have rows. What does that mean? So generally we used to have column headers over here, but now in this case, these are horizontal headers or row headers we can call. So the table is horizontally. Now, similar to VLOOKUP, we'll know the price of different office supplies using HLOOKUP. So this is the cell in which we need to find, we'll type the values, the known value, the known name like stapler, pins, sheets, pens, erasers or binders. So we'll get the price of it automatically. So let's click on this price tab, press equals to HLOOKUP parenthesis open. Now it says lookup value. So our lookup value is this cell, comma. Our table array is the entire table's range, comma, row index number. Now, instead of column index number, we have row index number. So our first row would be this, second would be this, third this, and fourth this. So we want the price of it, which is in the fourth one. So we'll write here 4, comma. Now we need a exact match. So we'll type false or 0, whatever suits you. Then parenthesis close and press enter. So since we haven't typed anything, it shows in A. We'll write here pins, press enter. It shows me the price of pins. Right? We'll look at one more example. So let's say I put stapler, press enter. It gives me the price of it. So similar to VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP also works exactly the same, but in this case we have horizontal tables. You would not get much examples of this while working on data sets, but still as an example you need to know that HLOOKUP also exists. Now let's just move into conditional formatting. So what is conditional formatting? As the name suggests, conditional formatting is nothing but formatting of data sets using certain conditions input by the user. So by giving certain conditions, only the values of the cell that matches that conditions would be altered and the rest would remain the same. Now you would ask, what is the use of conditional formatting? Let's assume that you are a teacher in a 200 strength class. Now you want to figure out who all students achieved a grade of more than 90%. In order to do so manually, it would take a lot of time and effort. On the same time, if you use conditional formatting, it would make your work a lot easier and lot simpler, saving you a lot of time and effort. Let's just look at some of the features that conditional formatting has. So the first one is highlight cell rules. So it highlights cells as per the selected conditions or rules. So you can find anything that is greater than equal to a certain value that you want to input as a condition. The second one is top and bottom rules. So in this, selected cells with the highest and the lowest value can be altered as per the selected condition. The third one is data bars. Now it applies a visual bar within each cell. The length of the bar would be the magnitude of the value within that range. The next is scales. So it is similar to data bars but with color gradients, with one color assigned to the lowest value and the second color assigned to the highest value. The next is icon sets. So instead of color scale, it gives certain icons like increasing, decreasing, and etc. Now let's just look at conditional formatting on the Microsoft Excel platform. All right. So in this spreadsheet, we have a data set that describes up the number of companies, different companies, and the quarterly revenues of those companies. So now we will do conditional formatting in this dataset. So our first objective is to find the companies with revenue per quarter less than $40,000. So for that, I'll select the dataset. Now I will click on the home ribbon and conditional formatting. So since I need it less than, so I'll highlight cell rule options, I'll choose then less than option. Now in this first column, I will type the value that I want to be less than. So it should be less than 40,000. So it would be less than 40,000. And then what characteristics I need. So should it be a light red fill with dark text, or yellow fill, green fill, or custom also we can choose, but I'll go with green fill with dark green text. So I click on OK. So now I have all the companies whose quarterly revenues less than $40,000 highlighted in green, right? So it becomes visually clear of how many companies are there. So in order to do one more thing I can do now, the second question is find the bottom 10 companies per quarter. Okay, so quarterly I need to find what all companies are in bottom 10 when it comes to revenue, right? So I'll click on quarter one, I'll select the range, click on conditional formatting. Okay, let's first undo what we did for our first objective. So so in this case, I'll just select my first quarter and click on conditional formatting. Now top and bottom rules. So I need bottom 10 items. So I'll click on bottom 10 and I can highlight it in, let's say, yellow fill with dark yellow color. I'll click. So here it is already mentioned 10, right? So for example, if the question would be bottom 5, so I could just say 5. So now it will show me the bottom 5 companies in particular quarter, right? I'll go to 10 and click OK. So, and the same thing I can do here. Now, what happens if I select the entire data set and do bottom 10 companies? So then in this case, it will give me the bottom 10 companies of the entire data set. But since the question asks per quarter, so we have to individually select the column of quarter, individual quarter to do our analysis. Okay, so next we'll explore more on this. So let's say conditional formatting. What are data bars? Okay. Now, according to how large the value is in particular cell, the gradient will be filled inside. So let's just say I'm selecting little clear ones. Let's select the red ones. Now, when we look at the values here, $22,584. So it's a very small value as compared to the entire data set. So it gives me a small bar inside the cell. In case of these three companies in their fourth quarter, their values are comparatively high when compared to the entire data set. So that is why it has a higher bar gradient per cell, right? So in this way we can distinguish as well. Now let's see this 99,000 is almost full because it is too high of a value relatively to the other cells. Whereas this 11,000, it's quite low. It's one of the lowest, I believe. So that is why it is slightly filled, right? So this is how we use data bars. We can also use color scales. So let's see what it is. First, I'll just undo it. Now I'll see color scales. So it will also give me different color scales or depending on how the values are, the greater value. So it is divided into basically three parts, top half, bottom half, and this thing. I can actually put colors. I can put new rule actually. So I need, let's say two color format, right? So I'll go for, let's say three color scale. So now it will divide the entire data set into three parts, and for the value we can choose. So in this dialog box, we can see select a rule type. So format a cell based on their values. This is what we will click on. It says what should be the minimum lowest values. Okay. So yeah, I'll go with percentile. Lowest 10% will be red. The around midpoint around 50% would be yellow, and the highest values, let's say percent highest 10% would be green. I'll click on OK. Now it will tell me the close to the top ones would give me dark green, the lowest one would give me red, and to the midpoint would give me yellow. So this is how we do our color scaling. And we can also do a lot of things like icon set. So I'll just undo it. So I'll just, okay. So in this case, we can do icon sets. So icon sets are basically different shapes and indicators that we can put. We can use, I'll just choose this one. Okay, so it says hash 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 hash. It is because the column length is not enough. So I'll just slide it a little bit. This also, or I can just double click so it gets bigger. So now it gives me what values are. So this is the midpoint. So it shows a horizontal arrow. This is on the lower half side. This is on the upper side. So it gives me distinctions between the, so basically the entire data set, all this conditional formatting is relative to one another. So how many values in the entire data set would be, so it would compare those values accordingly and set the symbols, right? So yeah, we can clear rules also. Clear rules is of, okay, entire data set also. We can do clear rules of the entire sheet, so it would go blank. And also we can create new rules such as, let's say, format only values that are above and below certain things. So above format, so I can give them different, I can border, I can fill colors in this. So I'll say blue color I need to fill. Okay, okay. So the values that are above average would be highlighted in blue and the rest would not be affected. So different rules we can set as well of whatever things we need. So this is how conditional formatting works. We can also find average values, above average, below average, percent in percentage also, and these all things we can do. Next is data validation. So data validation is a very interesting tool which allows you to control what can or cannot be entered in your spreadsheet. So data validation is a very important tool when it comes to data handling process, like collecting information. So let's say that you are rolling out a survey in which you want the user to fill only certain values in particular columns. So data validation allows you to do that. So let's see how do we manage data using data validation. Okay, so here we have Microsoft Excel. In this spreadsheet, we have a table in which we need to fill certain columns. So let's say the first one is name. So in this column, let's assume I only want the name should be a maximum of 20 characters long. So for that condition, I need to choose this range, click on data, data validation. So here the tabs appears. So in that settings tab, we need to fill the criteria that needs to be filled for the particular range. So I'll click on, since we need characters, so I'll choose text length, minimum character 1, maximum character, let's say 12, and say okay. Now let's check this out. Now if I type a word, let's say Madhur Singh, so it gets filled, Yash filled. But if I try to fill something that is large, let's say Abhishek Pal Sundar, click on enter. So now this says that the value does not match the data validation restrictions defined for this cell. So since this name is more than 12 characters long, the input is invalid. So now we'll retry and we'll put something a little less. Let's say Abhishek, enter. Now it satisfies the condition. So in this way, we can set certain conditions for this column. Similarly, we can make a drop-down list for gender column. So in order to do that, I'll again go to data validation column, press data validation. Now I will put allow as a list. So now I need to select the source. So I can just write here, let's say male, comma, female, and then press OK. So I only selected one column. I did not select the range, but I could select the entire range and do that. But in this case, I can choose it's male or female. So it will automatically come here. in whatever we choose. So there are only two things we can choose. We can't write anything here that would be invalid. So in this way we can choose list. Now comes we can put whole numbers or decimal numbers in marks criteria. So we can set the range from what number to what number we want in that particular column. So let's do that as well. Let's see. Data validation, allow only whole number or decimal. So since marks can be in decimal like 10.5, 12.5, 50.5, so we'll choose decimal. In between, let's say 0 to 100. And then we'll press OK. So in this case, let's see. 1, enter, 10, enter, 55.5, enter. Everything is being taken by Excel. But if we choose anything beyond our range, let's say 115. So it gives me an error that this value does not match the data restrictions. So we'll retry and put 1.5, which satisfies. In this way, we can do it. But let's say if it's a survey and you're rolling out to the user, how would the user know what values can we fill? So the error message should be customized, right? So in that case, we can do a thing, let's say data validation. So this condition we set, so we can put here error alert. The title would be, let's say invalid input, and error message would be please input values between between 0 and 100 and press OK. Now we go beyond our limit and press enter. So it would give us the error message that we customized. So our title was invalid input, and the description was please input values between 0 and 100. So in this way, the user can know that what values we need to feed, right? Or we can do one more thing. So we can just do again data validation, or we can just put an input message title. Let's say input message only values between 0 and 100 and press OK. So in this case, if I go here, so it will give me the input message that only values between 0 and 100 are allowed. So the user would beforehand know what values we need to feed before getting an error message. So in this way, we can do that. And we can also definitely we can set our data validation time. Also, we can set here date and time. So I'll set date between, let's say date of birth between 01, 10, 1998 to 01, 12, 2000 and press OK. So now they can do it in the same way. 01, 12, 1999, it will be OK, entered. So in the same way, we can do that. Now let's come to another most important concept. So what if we need to create a drop-down list for the subjects? So the number subjects are these: maths, English, physics, science, physics, Hindi, and biology. So if I need to make a list, what was our method? We used to write here maths, comma, English, comma, physics, comma, Hindi, comma, biology, right? So we click on OK. So then it used to come this, all the details that we can fill. Now let's say that the data set is quite big, that you can't manually put every single name with comma in between if you want to make a list. So in that case, we can put the source as another dataset link. So let's see how to do that. I'll just go back. I'll click on this I'll select the range, then I'll click on data validation. I'll allow it as list, the source. Now I can actually select the source. So I'll click on this. I'll select all these and press enter. So now the range is selected and I'll click on OK. So I will automatically get what that secondary link that is generated. The data set from there will be retrieved here. So let's say physics, or we can set anything, maths. But it has a disadvantage. So in that case, you cannot delete your primary data set. So let's see if we delete, what happens. Let's say I delete physics. Okay. And now we see the drop down list. So now maths, English, blank, Hindi, biology. So it will remain blank over here. So that is why this is one of the drawbacks in which we can't delete a primary data source. Next is pivot tables. So what are pivot tables? Pivot tables are used to sort, count, group, total, or reorganize stored data in a table. So now you would ask me, what is the difference between a normal table and a pivot table? So pivot table can categorize rows and columns into different sections that you would need to do. Now, in case of a normal table, you cannot categorize into rows and columns. You can, but you would have to use sort and filter and then manually uncheck all the selected options and select the ones that you need. But in case of pivot table, it automatically summarizes your data in the way you want. So it helps change rows into columns and columns into rows, and also the pivot fields options, so you can group them and do advanced calculations like sum, average, maxima, minima, and different other things as well. So now we'll look at an example of how pivot tables help us. So let's go to Microsoft Excel. So now here we have a spreadsheet in which we have a data set. So this data set is about different products being sold. So in this case, we have a product line defined. So it is classic cars, motorcycles, and a lot of other things. So first of all, this is a type of data set that you would encounter when you do data analytics. So this is a classic example. So there would be a lot of columns that you would encounter and n number of rows. So in this case, let me check how many rows are there. It is close to 3000, 2800, close to 3000 rows. So this is the type of data you'll be dealing with. It can be much more, it can be 10,000 rows as well. But now let's talk about the point pivot tables. So here we have quantity mentioned, order number mentioned, price, sales, order date, month in which these were sold, different years in which these were sold, and the name of the customer, their contact details, address, state, county, territory, country, postal code, etc. So these are the things that are actually given to us. Now our purpose is to create a table in which we can find what are the different product lines that were sold in different months. So an example of what is our objective, I'll show you this type of pivot table. So in this case, we have the sales of different product lines in different months. So this is how a pivot table is. So we'll make it together going forward, but this is our objective of what we need to do. Different rows are mentioned in the column here, in the rows here, row headers, and different product line are mentioned in the column headers here. And the grand total is given in the last column, and one grand total is given in the row header. So what is this? Now in January, let's say classic cars were sold at 3,03,000, right? Now in this case, the grand total of January of all product lines is given here. Now the grand total of all the different months of all the product lines are given over here, right? So this is how a pivot table looks like. Now let's build one together. So this is again our raw data, and now we need to create a pivot table out of it. So we'll click on any cell in the spreadsheet and click on insert. Now when we click on insert, we have an option called pivot table. So we'll click on pivot table here. Dialog box open. Now, in this case, we are asked certain questions. So select a table or range. Now, Excel automatically detects your table. So as you can see in the dataset, you would have a running line, right? Running box sort of thing here at the edges. So it automatically selects all the spreadsheet dataset. Now it would ask me, where do I want the pivot table to be, whether it is a new worksheet or existing worksheet. Now, if I, in case of new worksheet, it will add another sheet to this Excel file, and in existing worksheet, it will add it beyond the last column. So it will create a column on the right side beyond the last column. So in this case, we will select a new worksheet because it is convenient. So while clicking on new worksheet, now we'll get something like this. So it will be a column. It will ask to build a report. Choose the fields from the pivot table field list. Now pivot table fields is this dialog box. So we have the fields are basically the column headers. So in this case, our topmost line, the column headers are our fields. So we can choose whatever fields we want. Below it are four different columns. So the first column would tell us what filters do we need. So basically you can choose any filters that you want. You can drag all the columns that you need below. In this case, it would be selected. Now for our objective, we need to find number one, the sales or in different months and of different product line. So let's say, so columns I can put any, rows also I can put any according to what I need. Now the value column could only support numerical values. So it only takes numerical values. So for example, we need sales. So this is the most clear option. So I'll just put sales over here. Now something appears over here. We'll see what it is. Now this is the sum of sales of everything. Nothing is put on rows and columns. So it would not show anything. So let's say that I want my product line to be the column. Okay, let's say row. So so it will come over on the row headers, the product line. So these are the total categories we have: classic cars, motorcycles, planes, ships, trains, trucks, vintage cars. So these are the categories of product line we have in total in the data set. Now if I need months, right, so I'll put it in columns. So now it will give me the sum of sales in January of classic cars, vintage cars, ships, and everything, and it is divided into months. Right now, I can do different thing. As we saw, our objective is we need to create it in rows should be our months, and product line should be our columns. In our pivot table, we'll just switch it. So I'll put here, I'll interchange it. So now it becomes exactly the same that our objective was. So the sum is mentioned, everything is mentioned in here. So we can make it more worthy if we add the currency symbol, so it would be much more legible. Now let's take an example of how we are going to do it. Now if we would look closely, it gives me months and total sales. Okay, so let's go back in our data set and look at some details. So in this case, we have different months, different categories of product line, and different sales, right? But now if we look closely, there is an year ID as well. So now we have different years, like 2003 I can see, 4 and 5 I can see. So in this case, while we made pivot table, so our January would consist of 3 years combined together. That would be 2003, 4, and 5. So in order to distinguish in terms of years, we'll just remove our month ID, and we'll put an year ID. So now we know in 2003, 4, and 5 how many cars was what was the worth of cars that was sold, and the grand total of the cars sold in all the different product lines, and also in total different years, 2003, 4, and 5. Now let's say I want to know that in the January of 2003 how many cars were sold, right? So in that case, what we need to do, we need to put month ID below the row ID. Now it would distinguish first on the basis of year. So as we can see, first on the basis of year, then it will give me a list of, okay, January to it is not in order, but we can put it in order. That's not an issue. But in January, how many cars were sold? So this data would not be available, so it is just empty. But the data that is available in the data set, it will put it here and make the grand total of it. Now, similarly in case of 2004 and 2005. Now let's just say that I don't need the sales. I want the quantity, how many were sold in particular months and years of the different product lines. So in this case, I'll go again to the pivot table fields and unselect or drag the sum of sales back to the field option and click on the quantity ordered in values. Since for the sum of sales, we clicked on the dollar symbol, now we need to unclick it. So I'll go to the home ribbon, and in case of currency I'll put general, no specific format, so it will give me the quantity of different things sold in different months of different years. So in this way I'll get the quantity. So many more things we can do when it comes to the use of pivot tables. So this was one of the examples. Third and the final phase of your data analytics journey is data visualization. Now, considering your data analysis is done and you are fit to represent your data to your internal and external stakeholders. Now, internal stakeholders are someone, it can be your boss, your senior managers, the top brass of your company. And external stakeholders are your clients for whom this project has been allotted. Now, considering the time constraints they might have in their day to day work, they cannot go through your data sets one by one. So in order to make them understand more quickly and in a more efficient manner, we will use pictorial representations. Now these representations can be charts, right? It can be pie chart, it can be bar chart, line chart, and different scatter plots, and even some advanced charts like map charts and tree charts. So considering all these scenarios, now it becomes your responsibility to make sure all your analysis is pictorially represented. So let's move on to data visualization. The first chart that we will be talking about is a pie chart. Now, pie chart represents part to whole relationship. So since it's a very basic type of chart in Excel, we learn about it with an example. So let's say you have three friends and all of them have apples, right? So you have the maximum amount of apples, that is 4. The other three have 3 apples, 2 apples, and 1 apple respectively. Now, in order to represent this data pictorially, what you would do, you would make a pie chart, right? So all your three friends and including you will be represented on this pie chart. Now, since you have the maximum amount of apples, that is 4, you would get the maximum chunk. So this area would be yours with 4 apples. Your friend would get, the one with 3 apples will get a slightly lesser chunk, 3 apples. The one with 2 apples will get slightly smaller slice, and the one with 1 apple will get the smallest slice. So this is how a pie chart is represented based on the value in the data set. The more the value, the bigger the slice, or the bigger the percentage of that particular slice. So it has 3 major components, pie chart. The one is area, the second one is central angle, and the third one is arc length. So Excel does it automatically, but let's take an example. Let's just look at what this is. So area would be this chunk here. Central angle is the angle it makes from the center, and the arc length is the circumference of that particular slice. So these are the 3 major components of a pie chart, but Excel does it itself. So you just need to feed values and Excel will make a pie chart for you. The second chart, that is the most important and most widely used, is a bar chart. Now bar chart uses bands of different heights to show different amounts so that they can be distinguished. So as you can see, one side, the y-axis here, has values, numerical values in it, and x-axis has basically the categories in which it is divided. So this is represented in x-axis. You can do vice versa also, then it will be a horizontal bar graph. This is a vertical bar graph. So you can compare different like months or different categories of food items or any number of things. So this is generally used in areas where you want to find how much difference is there between two categories. So this is the most effective one there. The third one is line chart. Now line chart represent shows the changes over a certain amount of time. So it connects one section to the other section. In case of bar graphs, there was no interconnection between these things, but in a line chart you can see in January to February you have a line drawn over here. So this gradient shows what is the difference between the 2 months, right? So this is how line chart operates. So each categories are along horizontal and the value is over vertical. So this is the most favored method to do, because otherwise if you do vice versa in line chart, it would not make sense, right? So it is also preferred when one parameter is non-numeric, which is the horizontal one, and the other one is numeric, the vertical one, right? Now let's look at these examples in Excel. Now let's look at the example of these charts using these tables. So this table, I used it during the H lookup session, so I'll use it again. So here we have office supplies, product ID, quantity, and price mentioned. So in order to make pie and bar charts, let's select the range of price and office supplies. Then click on insert, and then as you can see under charts here, we have different types of chart. We have pivot charts, we have map charts, and all these types of charts that are represented here. So I'll choose pie chart. So I'll click on pie chart. Then it gives me an option to choose either 2D pie, 3D pie, or donut. So in this one, I'll choose 2D pie chart. So I'll click on that. Now it makes selects, it highlights me the different range that we selected and automatically mentions it over here. Now in this case, I cannot see the percentage in which it is divided, right? In order to do that, I'll go on chart styles, right? I'll click on the downward arrow and choose whichever one I want. Okay, so I see that this one here is clear. Okay, so I'll choose this one. Right. So now I get percentage, I get the different categories in which it is divided, and I get the name. Now, as we can see, this is not the name of the chart, right? So I can double click and change to pie chart or something, or pie chart prices, something like that. So I can change it to whatever I want. And so this is how it is represented. Now coming on to next chart, that is bar chart. So I'll just delete it. I'll click again on this, the same thing. I'll select both the ranges that we selected earlier, then click on insert. And here the first section is insert bar chart. So I'll click on the downward arrow. Now again, it gives me different options. I can get 3D effect. I can get horizontal. This is what I mentioned. You can use horizontal bar charts as well, or vertical bar charts. So 3D horizontal, 3D vertical. I think vertical looks much more clear to understand. So I'll use 2D. I click here. So now I again get this chart, and since it is not mentioned any percentage, or it's quite clear 500 here. But if I want to change certain things, I can again go to chart styles. I can change how visually they appear and different. See, this is the quantities are, the price is mentioned in the bar itself. So I can choose whatever. This one looks pretty good. I'll choose this one. So now I can see that it is clearly mentioned everything. I'll change it to probably price bar chart, something like this. But as you can see, there are no mentions of what is in y-axis and what is in x-axis. So it is not mentioned. Okay, I want to put something here. Axis, on the axis, I want to put a category or something like that. So how to do that? So we click on the left side here, add chart elements. So I'll click on that, axis titles. So now I can have a horizontal axis title. I can have a vertical axis title, right? So we have all learned in our junior classes that the axis titles are an important one. So I'll write here price. I'll write here category. So in this way, we can make bar charts. So in order to make a pivot chart, let's take an example. So for pivot charts, this is a data set that we analyzed before. So I'll use the same data set. So we made this kind of pivot table over here, right? So I'll use this in order to make a line chart. And this will also give you an example of what pivot charts are. So making a chart from pivot table is called a pivot chart. So let's see how this works. So it's basically basic charts, but in pivot table. I want different months to be represented via line chart in a pivot table. So I'll go to again insert. Then since we are already in pivot chart, we would not click on pivot chart, but we can use different uh, charting patterns. So since I want line chart, I'll use 2D, 3D area does not look very distinctive. So I'll use 2D line. Okay, so here also, as you can see, if I hover over this one, it says stacked line. So it shows me the sum of sales and the months, right? If I click on this, it also shows me the sum of sales, but with a different y-axis. So the values are different. The various bars in which it divides is different. So in case of percentage also I can get. So in this case, you have different percentages mentioned. So I can click on any one of them. I'll click on this one. Now let's say I only selected this range, but it gave me all range. So in pivot chart, it gives you all range. You can actually filter it from this filter option here. So if I uncheck all and I only click motorcycles and click OK, so it will only give me the data of motorcycles in every month and its values, right? And here also the pivot chart also only summarizes it into motorcycles and months. So this is very good here in which we can do it. You can actually change the month also if you want to see a particular month. We can do that as well. So this is how a line chart and a pivot chart works. Next, we'll look into two of the more advanced charts that are not commonly used in our analysis but are a must to know. So the first one is tree chart or tree map as we say. So it provides a hierarchical view of data. So just as the example shown in the picture, so we can see this is an example of tree map, and here we have different countries and some value in which they are arranged. Okay, this value I would know because it is the data set which I am using, but this tree maps are not used to depict the exact data that is in the data set. So if you just want to know, okay, which proportion is maximum to which within the hierarchy, so this would tell us that. So the first one is India. So India has the maximum amount of value in a particular cell. That's why it has the maximum area. Second is Saudi Arabia, then Russia, Germany, Australia, China, and America and Spain. So the ones with bigger values are towards the left side of the map, and the ones with are less value are towards the right side. So that is why it gives a good comparing proportions within the hierarchy. The second chart is called map chart. So it is used to navigate values and shows categories across different geographical regions. So in this case, we will use only the names of countries to represent any data set. So the countries will be highlighted according to the values. So this is most commonly used by, let's say, World Bank or United Nations categories to represent data across the globe. Right. So, and also some of the companies who are involved in logistical supplies, imports, exports, use these kinds of maps to represent data. Let's look at the examples in Excel. So here we have a spreadsheet in which there are different the countries and GDP per capita are mentioned here. So in order to create tree maps or a map chart, let's select the columns and then click again on insert. And here we have the first one here. It represents hierarchical chart. So this is a tree map. So we'll click on tree map. Now it automatically extracts the values from the range we have selected and makes a tree map out of it. Now in this case, we can change the layout according to our wish. So I can choose any one of the ones in chart styles. So as we can see, the ones with the greater value, Qatar and US, are towards the left side, while the ones which are quite small are towards the right side, right? Okay. So I choose this. Okay, I can make changes from this plus sign here if I want to see something, if I don't want to see something, or Or if I want to change the layout, how it is styling here also, you can change it, and color also if you want the scales to be of a different color, multicolor. How do you want to change it? It's upon you. So you can do all these things using this. Now coming to the second type of chart, that is the map chart. So we'll undo whatever we did. Okay, again we'll select the data set, then we'll click on insert, and towards the middle of the charts we have a thing called maps. So if I click on this filled map, so it will generate the countries and their values according to how much it is there. So we can see in this case all the countries which are mentioned are in the map, right? So we can change the layout again from charting styles. We can create whatever we desire, and also we can change the way it is there. So wait, if you double click on the chart, you will get format plot area. So you can actually change the fill, how it is filled. You can put a solid gradient fill or pattern fill. So in case I want the countries which are not selected here, I can actually make them the way I want. So, okay, it is not represented in this, but in this case, I can do it. Pattern fill. Yeah, I can change the way it is. So the ones which are not selected will get changed. So so it is clear for us to know which one of them is selected, right? This was all about map charts. Now let's look at what we have learned in this course so far. So we started by knowing the three different phases of a data analytics project. Then we moved into knowing what is the importance of data cleaning and what are some ways in which we can clean data. Next, we move into knowing different basic functionalities of Excel. So we learned about countif function, trim function, length, concatenate, etc. Then we sorted and filtered data using in long data sets, and also analyzed the data using VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP functions. Then we learnt about conditional formatting, data bars, color scales, etc. Then we knew about the data validation techniques. How do we validate the data? Next, we learned about how to make pivot tables, how to analyze data using pivot tables. Lastly, we learned the importance of data visualization in Excel, and also learned about some basic graphs like pie chart, bar graphs, and also some advanced ones like tree chart and map charts. So this was all about the course. Hope you learned an amazing bit of knowledge by this. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, we request you to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. This is done to make sure you don't miss out on any of the new updates or video releases of great learning. And of course, if you enjoy this video, show us some love. Do like the video. Knowledge increases by sharing, so make sure you share this video to your friends, family, and whoever can make use of it. And at the end of it, make sure to comment on this video if you have any queries and suggestions, and I would be more than happy to respond to all of your comments.